Verses 15 to 27. It was a brave appearance, no doubt, which the 5 kings made when they took the field for the reducing of Gibeon, and a brave army they had following them, but they were all routed, put into disorder first, and then brought to destruction by the hailstones. And now Joshua thought, his work being done, he might go with his army into quarters of refreshment. Accordingly it was resolved, perhaps in a council of war, that they should presently return to the camp at Gilgal, v. 15, till they should receive orders from God to take possession of the country they had now conquered, but he soon finds he has more work cut out for him. The victory must be pursued, that the spoils might be divided. Accordingly he applies himself to it with renewed vigor. The forces that had dispersed themselves must be followed and smitten. When tidings were brought to Joshua where the kings were, he ordered a guard to be set upon them for the present, v. 18, reserving them for another day of destruction, and to be brought forth to a day of wrath. He directs his men to pursue the common soldiers, as much as might be, to prevent their escaping to the garrisons, which would strengthen them, and make the reduction of them the more difficult, v. 19. Like a prudent general, he does that first which is most needful, and defers his triumphs till he has completed his conquests, nor was he in such haste to insult over the captive kings but that he would first prevent the rallying again of their scattered forces. The result of this vigorous pursuit was that a very great slaughter was made of the enemies of God and Israel. The field was cleared of them, so that none remained but such as got into fenced cities, where they would not long be safe themselves, nor were they capable of doing any service to the cities that sheltered them, unless they could have left their fears behind them. None moved his tongue against any of the children of Israel, v. 21. This expression intimates their perfect safety and tranquility. Some think it should be read, from Ex 11:7, against any of the children of Israel did not a dog move his tongue, no, not against any one man of them. They were not threatened by any danger at all after their victory, no, not so much as the barking of a dog. Not one single Israelite, for the original makes it so particular, was brought into any distress, either in the battle or in the pursuit. Their honor and reputation, no man had any reproach to cast upon them, nor an ill word to give them. God not only tied the hands, but stopped the mouths, of their enraged enemies, and put lying lips to silence. The Chaldee paraphrase makes it an expression of their unalloyed joy for this victory, reading it, "There was no hurt nor loss to the children of Israel, for which any man should afflict his soul." When the army came to be reviewed after the battle, there was none slain, none wounded, none missing. Not one Israelite had occasion to lament either the loss of a friend or the loss of a limb, so cheap, so easy, so glorious, was this victory. The kings that had hidden themselves must now be called to an account, as rebels against the Israel of God, to whom, by the divine promise and grant, this land did of right belong and should have been surrendered upon demand. See here how they were secured. The cave which they fled to, and trusted in for a refuge, became their prison, in which they were clapped up, till Joshua sat in judgment on them, v. 18. It seems they all escaped both the hailstones and the sword, God so ordering it, not in kindness to them, but that they might be reserved for a more solemn and terrible execution, as, for this cause, Pharaoh survived the plagues of Egypt, and was made to stand, that God might in him show his power, Ex 9:16. They all fled, and met at the same place, Providence directing them, and now those who were lately consulting against Israel were put upon new counsels to preserve themselves and agreed to take shelter in the same cave. The information brought to Joshua of this is an evidence that there were those of the country, who knew the holes and fastnesses of it, that were in his interests. And the care Joshua took to keep them there when they were there, as it is an instance of his policy and presence of mind, even in the heat of action, so, in the result of their project, it shows how those not only deceive themselves, but destroy themselves, who think to hide themselves from God. Their refuge of lies will but bind them over to God's judgment. How they were triumphed over. Joshua ordered them to be brought forth out of the cave, set before him as at the bar, and their names called over. And when they either were bound and cast upon the ground unable to help themselves, or threw themselves upon the ground, humbly to beg for their lives, he called for the general officers and great men, and commanded them to trample upon these kings, and set their feet upon their necks, not in sport and to make themselves and the company merry, but with the gravity and decorum that became the ministers of the divine justice, who were not herein to gratify any pride or passion of their own, but to give glory to the God of Israel as higher than the highest, who treads upon princes as mortar, Isa 41:25, and is terrible to the kings of the earth, PS 76:12. The thing does indeed look barbarous, thus to insult over men in misery, who had suddenly fallen from the highest pitch of honor into this disgrace. It was hard for crowned heads to be thus trodden upon, not by Joshua himself, that might better have been borne, at least not by him only, but by all the captains of the army. Certainly it ought not to be drawn into a precedent, for the case was extraordinary, and we have reason to think it was by divine direction and impulse that Joshua did this. God would hereby punish the abominable wickedness of these kings, the measure of whose iniquity was now full. And, by this public act of justice done upon these ringleaders of the Canaanites in sin, he would possess his people with the greater dread and detestation of those sins of the nations that God cast out from before them, which they would be tempted to imitate. He would hereby have the promise by Moses made good, Deut 33:29, Thou shalt tread upon their high places, that is, their great men, which should the rather be speedily fulfilled in the letter, because they are the very last words of Moses that we find upon record. He would hereby encourage the faith and hope of his people Israel in reference to the wars that were yet before them. Therefore Joshua said, v25 Fear not, nor be dismayed. Fear not these kings, nor any of theirs, as if there were any danger of having this affront now put upon them in aftertime revenged upon yourselves, a consideration which keeps many from being insolent towards those they have at their mercy, because they know not how soon the uncertain fate of war may turn the same wheel upon themselves. But you need not fear that any should rise up ever to revenge this quarrel. Fear not any other kings, who may at any time be in confederacy against you, for you see these brought down, whom you thought formidable. Thus shall the Lord do to all your enemies, now that they begin to fall so low that you may set your feet on their necks. You may be confident that they shall not prevail, but shall surely fall before you. Est 6:13. He would hereby give a type and figure of Christ's victories over the powers of darkness, and believers' victories through him. All the enemies of the Redeemer shall be made his footstool, PS 110:1. And CPS 1840. The kings of the earth set themselves against him, PS 2:2, but sooner or later we shall see all things put under him, Hebrew 2:8, and principalities and powers made a show of, Colonel 2:15. And in these triumphs we are more than conquerors, may tread upon the lion and adder, PS 91:13, may ride on the high places of the earth, ISA 58:14, and may be confident that the God of peace shall tread Satan under our feet, shall do it shortly and do it effectually. How they were put to death. Perhaps, when they had undergone that terrible mortification of being trodden upon by the captains of Israel, they were ready to say, as a gag, Surely the bitterness of death is past, and that sufficient unto them was this punishment which was inflicted by many, but their honors cannot excuse their lives, their forfeited devoted lives. Joshua smote them with the sword, and then hanged up their bodies till evening, when they were taken down, and thrown into the cave in which they had hidden themselves, v 26:27. That which they thought would have been their shelter was made their prison first and then their grave. So shall we be disappointed in that which we flee to from God, yet to good people the grave is still a hiding place. If these 5 kings had humbled themselves in time, and had begged peace instead of waging war, they might have saved their lives, but now the decree had gone forth, and they found no place for repentance, or the reversal of the judgment. It was too late to expect it, though perhaps they sought it carefully with tears.